Hi, my name's Siobhan McLennan, and for assessment task 1 in general sciences, I use Melbourne Museum as my excursion location. Just an overview of Melbourne Museum. It's based in Carlton, so it's very central for most schools to attend. I spoke to a lady from Melbourne Museum about their school program, and she said they have multiple schools every day that are booked in to attend. You can either do a guided tour, there is the opportunity just to go into the general entry, or you can book in for specific exhibits like the Darwin to DNA exhibit that I will speak about later. They do provide you with all documents needed for this excursion, including insurance, risk assessments, any public liability, any additional things that will be needed for particular students with any learning problems, and they also provide notes that are needed. So the Melbourne Museum also does outreach programs. There's 2 types. So the first is doing a kit that is sent to your school and you essentially rent it out for a certain period of time. These tend to be targeted to multiple year levels, so you can use it in multiple classrooms. They can be science, but they can also be history or geography or arts related, or a combination of some or all of these. They tend to be a problem, and the students have to collaboratively work together to either find the solution, or they may have to make something from that. The second option is outreach programs where where Melbourne Museum will come to your school and they will do an exhibit at your school. But this is a very specifically timetabled situation. And they're not always at all schools every year, but they'll let you know. So Darwin to DNA exhibit is working on Charles Darwin and Alfred Wallace's evolution and natural selection theories, and then linking this to DNA and gene expression in today's society. It is obviously working with showing how evolution has occurred over time, and then also working with fossils and understanding that we can get DNA from these fossils to understand the patterns. There's a workbook that is provided by the museum that you can use in the classroom. So at the top there is a link that they do recommend you do use this notebook while at the exhibit. It is quite long, it's 6 pages and quite detailed, but does relate to the curriculum. A way that I thought would be great so that students are able to still interact in the exhibit was to split your students into 6 groups. Each group had 1 page that they had to work on and make sure the answers were perfect, and then they were able to sort of just spend the rest of the time just learning about the rest of the exhibit. In the classroom, you could then use this to guide the lesson. So each group presents their page of answers, and the other groups have to write down those answers from interpreting those answers. This could then be used as a means of assessment at the end of the unit, so you could let them know that you were going to be taking this workbook and marking it, which would then obviously make sure that they are putting a little bit more time into making sure the answers and that they're interacting a little bit more with the students presenting to the class, which will then mean that the lesson is a little bit more guided. There is pre-notes provided. They are very detailed, but they do guide your lesson planning, and they're closely related to the curriculum. So the museum lady I spoke to did recommend using these as a teaching resource. This was my lesson plan for the day of the excursion. It's obviously coming from Bendigo, so it is a whole day of excursion. There wasn't a lot of resources that were needed for the students apart from the workbook and making sure that they knew the groups that they were in, but obviously aside from that they will obviously need to know different permission slips and things. This was an assessment that I decided would be a good way to fill in any gaps or see any gaps that were needed in the students' learning. I decided with a multi-choice, but you could also do obviously tests and things. This will then coincide with the workbook assignment that they will have done and completed, so you can mark the 2 and sort of see if any gaps show up. The lady that I spoke to at Melbourne Museum obviously said that they do try and make these specific exhibits link directly to the Victorian curriculum. So these two slides show the two direct curriculum links for this exhibit. And she said that the time has been taken to make sure that they are, well, this one is biological science related and is a positive for your school.